that. I think, look at this. Everyone's on time. Excellent. Right. There will be some late stragglers. So what I will do is I will hand over to Simon and let him do his bit. And he's going to basically get our mindsets all focused towards bigger sales, more money. Is that right, Simon?
That'd be nice.
Yeah, I'm going to focus on mindset, and it is about, you get your mindset right, then other stuff can follow.
Excellent.
All right, shall I take it away?
Yes, please. Yeah.
All right, so hello everybody. My name's Simon Flinter. Uh, I'm a hypnotherapist and coach. So I'm going to do a short presentation, about 20 minutes, um, give or take. If you've got any questions, pop them in the chat. Happy to answer them. I'll share my screen just to make it a little bit more interesting. I like visuals, so I hope you do too. So yeah, I'm really interested in oops, hang on. Let's go back to the first slide. I'm interested to explore how we can boost resilience. I will ask questions. So, first question is, if I ask a question, what stops you from having a go at answering it? And I ask this question because I've done lots of presentations, and if there's 100 people in the presentation, attending, about five of them will answer. I ask you a question. Just let me know in the chat.
I don't know if I can use it.
Will do. Simon, I must admit, you went a bit blurry there. I think your internet might have dropped out a little bit.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Yeah, go on. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I was just asking the question, what stops people? Yeah, Zora's just saying. Let me know if
Sorry, 1 second. Someone's doubled up. Give me a second. Who's doubled? Give me a second. Let's. Um, I think Jane. Right. Yeah, go on. Try again, Simon. Sorry.
yeah, I'll tell you, I'll just check that mic is going. So can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. If there is echoing, people might just need to
Yeah.
mute themselves.
Yeah. Can everyone mic there? Anyway, I'll do it.
I'll mute the mic. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So my first question is, if I ask a question, what stops you from just giving an answer, having a go? Let me know in the chat. And I asked that question because I've done lots of presentations, and if there's 100 people on the call, about five of them will interact, and everyone else is silent. So just let me know what's your thoughts about that. Yeah, and that's a common thing, Jane. People say, "Oh, I don't want to look silly." I invite you to kind of adopt the mindset of it doesn't really matter. So if I ask you the question, pineapple on pizza, yes or no, there isn't a right answer. Give me your opinion on that. And it doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks. Yeah, Rob says fear of being wrong. If I don't know the answers and if I have too many answers, okay, that's interesting. Um, so it sounds like you've got a very flexible, creative mind there. So, I presume everyone on this call is going to be supportive. So if someone else gives an answer that isn't the right answer, no one's going to be judging. Is that true? Put a yes in the chat if that is true. So, yeah, so I'm getting some yeses. Perfect. So who would like more? Hang on, why are my slides advancing?
Simon, you've muted yourself. It is.
Can't hear anything.
Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah,
Simon's.
no, no,
Oh,
no.
you're back now. Yeah, go on. You're back.
Yeah, for some reason, the this isn't letting me advance the slides. So I might just have to abandon showing you my lovely slides. Let's just see if I can stop the screen share. I don't know if you can.
Yeah. Unshare the screen. What I'll do is let me make you the 1 second. If you
Yeah, what? what's happening, this happens sometimes on Zoom, it doesn't let you uh change. I'm trying to stop the share right now, and it's not letting me do that. Okay, here we go. Okay, fingers crossed. So let me know which of these you'd like. More energy, more calm, better sleep, greater productivity. So I'm going to share some bad news to begin with, but then I'm going to share some good news. So why should you listen to me? So I've trained everyone from teenagers to partners in one of the top three global law firms in the world. And I remember training one partner, and he was one of the most high performing people I've ever trained. And he was the person who said, I totally get this training. You need to present to our team. And I presented, I did a lunchtime presentation to the team. Normally, no one turns up to these meetings. About 25 of the team out of 30 people turned up, 19 of them signed up for the training. And it doesn't matter what level you're at. A lot of people are using their energy inefficiently because they have self-doubt, imposter syndrome. They think someone's going to tap them on the shoulder and saying, what are you doing? You're a complete fraud. Get out. People have negative beliefs, negative internal dialogue. And essentially, they're losing vitality and productivity and ultimately undermining their health. When I gave when I've given presentation to teams, often people ask the question, well, how can this help? We're in a stressful environment. When I've put that question to participants who completed the course that I run, the answer they give is we have options. I realize now that I am more resilient, more productive. Some of the highest producers were saying to me, I was going to quit, but now I feel equipped to do my job. And the consistent responses we got is those of us who've done the training are managing themselves better. Those who haven't aren't. So I like to consider that there are things that we're doing that deplete our energy. Some of the stuff we're aware of, but some of the stuff is subconscious. It's like that iceberg. It's below our conscious understanding. These things are still robbing us of our resilience. So what is resilience? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the threats to resilience, and we'll talk about how to boost resilience. So as I say, I'm interested to know what made you kind of come to this little chat. So do let me know in the chat, and I'll have a look at your answers later. It's always really useful to know what's motivating people. So as I say, I'm a hypnotherapist and coach. I'm fascinated by what makes people resilient, what makes people successful, and what stops people from being successful. As a hypnotherapist, what I do is very different to stage hypnosis, where they're selecting the most suggestible people and getting them to bark like dogs and cluck like chickens. That's not what I do. Really, what I'm doing is helping people understand that actually we're hypnotizing ourselves all the time. And sometimes we're doing that in unhelpful ways, sometimes we're doing that in helpful ways. Anytime you've driven somewhere and you get to your destination, you think, I don't even know how I got here. That's an example of hypnosis. You were kind of in a narrow focused state. Or if you go to the cinema and at the end of the film, you kind of remember that you're in the cinema. And whilst you're in that film, you're so immersed that you were actually just deleting all the other information, the sounds of traffic outside, etc. So I say we can use our mind to hypnotize ourselves in unhelpful and helpful ways. And when we narrow our focus, the subconscious is more open to ideas. That includes ideas that are not helpful and ideas that are helpful. So it's really important that we're putting helpful ideas into our subconscious, because that becomes our operating system, if you like. So a few examples of, people who've been successful. This is a guy called Gary, who is a musician. He's a keyboard player for a famous jazz guitarist called John McLaughlin. He's completely happy for me to talk about him because he went public. He was interviewed in one of the newspapers. He had a flying phobia. And he came to me, he said, look, can I see you on Friday? Because I'm going on a month tour of America. on Monday. And he said, I've already seen a hypnotherapist and it didn't work. I asked him, why didn't it work? And he said, well, one of the things is when he hypnotized me, he started talking in the voice of Laurence Olivier. And I said to him, I can't do Laurence Olivier. I can do an Indian accent because I'm half Indian. So I said, what I'm wanting you to do is closing your eyes, making yourself comfortable. And he just started laughing and giggling and he was apologizing for laughing. And I said, look, don't apologize. It's fine. This will help you relax. And we did some work. On the Monday, he got on a plane from London to Paris, and then flew to New York. And he got on and off of planes for a month. He sent me this picture of him in a cockpit. He said, there's no way I would have done that in the past because I was so scared. And so what I was doing is finding out what was going on in his head and teaching him how to use that powerful computer in a more useful way. This is Sue, and she was agoraphobic. She didn't leave the house for 18 months. She had anxiety, stress. Because of the stress, she had physical issues, fatigue. She came from Liverpool to London, and after the first day of working with her, she went to a restaurant. On the second day, she said, I want to go to Harrods. She got on the underground during the rush hour, went to Harrods, went to the theatre. A few months later, she sent me this picture. You might not be able to see what it is, so I've blown it up. It's
Sorry,
her
sorry,
abseiling.
Simon. Sorry, is it just
Yeah.
me? I can only see a picture of a guy holding a bulb in his hands.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think you've got it's saying you've got a double click to start it. We can't whatever you're seeing, we can't see.
Okay. I've double clicked. Has that helped?
No. I would say,
No.
can you unshare and then reshare?
Yeah, let's try that.
Yeah, try that. Unshare and reshare. I think it's locked up. So yeah, reshare it.
Okay. All right. It's bizarre because on Zoom, sometimes you can't actually see the controls once you start
Yeah,
sharing.
I
But
know. Zoom is it's
all right,
should
let's have
be.
another go. Let's get
Okay,
my.
right. Yeah, right now we can see your screen. Right, try now. That's it.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, we can see something on the wall now.
Yeah, that's Sue abseiling, okay? And a few years after I trained her, I sent her an email saying, "Quick question," and she said, "Oh, I can't deal with that at the moment because I'm away," and she was in Australia. So that's not bad for someone who didn't leave the house for 18 months. She didn't even want to answer the door or the phone because she had such low self-esteem, experienced so much stress. And this is that picture actually was her on the Blue Mountains in Australia. This is a picture of Lisa. Any guesses where she is? Uh, I'll tell you the answer. She's on the Great Wall of China. She was experiencing back pain, massive anxiety. She lived in China, and she said, "When I go back to China, I've got a friend who wants to go traveling with me." And before this training, there's no way I could go traveling. She was traveled on trains for hours. The beds were basically planks of wood, and she said it was even with her in the past her back issues, she wouldn't have been able to do that. Wasn't an issue. Spent like 10 days or so traveling around China. So I'm really interested, as I say, to how to help people get out of their own way, resolve stress. Do work a lot with people with burnout, chronic fatigue syndrome, more recently long COVID. As I say, I've done corporate work. You've probably seen a picture of my business partner because he burnt out, went off work, went back to work, and on the first day he was told to clear his desk because the firm was closing down. So he walked out the office with two boxes, and the world's press were outside the office because it was Lehman Brothers. And so the picture of him was on every newspaper throughout the world. So you've probably seen a picture of him. Together we were doing that corporate work. He decided to take some time out, which is why I'm not doing corporate work at the moment. But I'm really passionate about this work because it helped me. I actually was working as a director of a housing trust. I completely burned out. I realized now I was in the wrong job because it wasn't what interested me. What interests me is the work I do. But I did burn out. I didn't work for 8, 9 years. At one point, I couldn't walk for 1 minute. And I went from not being able to do much to working again, playing sport, living an active life. Did get a physical injury a while back, which has slowed me down a bit, but life is still great. So let's talk about what resilience is. Okay, so I define resilience as bringing back, resuming original state, the ability to endure. It's an engineering term, but in relation to people, I think there's two elements. Number one, there's the responsive element, recognizing when we've been knocked off balance and knowing how to restore equilibrium. And then there's the proactive element, developing the mindset and thinking skills so that we're less likely to be knocked off balance. And I love this quote by Charles Darwin. It's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. So this is what I'm very interested in, how to help people spot when they're not being flexible in their thinking, because that is depleting our energy. So if we think about the threat to resilience, we could talk about genes, medical interventions, our environment, our resources, our lifestyle. We could break lifestyle down into nutrition, movement, sleep, mindset. What I would say is mindset is influencing a lot of what we do. It affects what we eat, how much we move, it affects our sleep. So what is stress? That's the first threat to resilience. Stress is, there's three types of stress. There's acute physical stress, getting a virus, maybe a change in temperature. I don't know how affected you are by the sudden change in temperature. Some people, people I work with are all saying, oh, it's really affecting them. There's chronic physical stress, maybe having an injury or a health challenge. Maybe if you've got COVID and it took a little while to recover, that's an example of a chronic physical stress. And then there's psychological stress. So there's a professor from Stanford called Robert Sapolsky, and he's written a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Any ideas why zebras don't get ulcers? Pop your answer in the chat. I'll see if I can't actually access the chat at the moment, so I'll keep talking, but give us your answers. I'll have a look at them later. So sometimes people say, oh, zebras don't experience stress. Well, they do. They experience lions who want to eat them. However, zebras don't ruminate on past events. They don't say, oh, I wish I hadn't tried to chat up that female zebra while she was going to the toilet. They're not worrying about future events. They're not saying, oh, I hope the watering hole isn't busy tomorrow. It was absolute chaos today. They tend to live in the present. Okay. People do tend to ruminate on past events. They do worry about the future. And these stressors can activate the stress response. Professor Sapolsky says that all these small stresses can add up and deplete our energy, make us more prone to getting sickness, diseases that make us sick. And this is something I really didn't appreciate until, I read his book and started doing this work, started learning about resilience because I wasn't very resilient. So when we are in the stress response, it affects our energy, our production and storage is affected. Our thinking is affected. Our rational thinking is switched off. It affects our digestion. Our digestion is suppressed because the brain thinks we need to run away or fight a threat. Our sleep is affected, so we don't achieve deep, refreshing sleep. Our sleep is light and interrupted. And that's really useful if you're a caveman and you're worrying about a saber-toothed tiger prowling outside the cave. Our immune system is suppressed, so we're more likely to get a cold, according to research. So some examples of threats to resilience: anxiety, worry, and just as I go through the list, consider how many of these things are relevant to you. Depression, low self-esteem, feeling overwhelmed. I think about a week ago, I was feeling really fatigued, and I suddenly realized I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed because I'm doing this business course. I've got a lot to do. And I realized I needed to just strategize, and that fatigue just went away. Okay, perfectionism, procrastination, risk, either being prone to taking too much risk or being too safe, not taking enough risk. Blame, either blaming others or blaming ourselves. No, I've never heard anyone say, sorry, I'm late. It was my fault. I didn't allow enough time. We always tend to say, oh, it was the traffic. Okay, negative internal dialogue. talking to ourselves in negative ways, catastrophizing, feeling helpless, hopeless, futile frustrations, being concerned about things that we can't control, found out syndrome, believing that we're not good enough, and there might be other stuff that you're doing. Some mindset thinking patterns that people get caught up is black and white, right and wrong thinking, all or nothing thinking. Example of this is smokers, they don't smoke a cigarette for 6 years, they smoke one cigarette, and then they say, oh, I failed, and then they carry on smoking. Whereas they could just say, that was one blip. I've managed to not smoke for 6 years. I can do it for another 6 years. 80-20 thinking. This is where, let's say, you do a presentation, 80% of it goes well, but what do you focus on? The 80% that goes well or the 20% that doesn't go so well? Okay. And that's a lot of people who have a phobia about presentations. That's what they do. Generalizing, making a mistake and saying, oh, I'm such an idiot. Either or thinking. It's either this or that, whereas sometimes the solution is both this and that. Mind reading. I'm going through these quickly just so that this doesn't go on too long, but if anything needs clarifying, just let me know in the chat. Mind reading, second guessing what other people think in a way that's not helpful. Past orientating, being too concerned about the past, dwelling on past mistakes, worrying about the future. Damned if I do, damned if I don't kind of mentality. So I might as well not bother. Giving yourself superpowers. So Gary, the guy who had a flying phobia, believed that if he got on a plane, it was more likely to crash. But he didn't have that kind of power over the plane. Being very problem oriented. So it's good to identify problems, but obviously we need to then think about what the solutions are. And that's why possibilities is a very important pattern. This is where I talk about this equation E plus R equals O, where E is the event, R is the response, O is the outcome. Let's say the event is making a mistake. I could really focus on the negative. I could look at it in a neutral way, or I could view it as a positive. I could think, okay, this is something I can learn from. That's going to affect the outcome. If I have a negative interpretation, more likely going to have a negative outcome. I'm more worried about doing a presentation next time, less likely to want to do it. If I have a neutral outcome, I'm going to have a very different experience. If I have a positive outcome, wow, this is a great opportunity to learn from this, then, my next presentation is going to be even better. So what is psychological stress? It's when our thoughts, our feelings, our internal dialogue, the stuff we're saying to ourselves, and our imagination, the images, the movies we run in our heads, activate our fight flight response. Our mind can literally turn on the fight flight response. If I said to you, I want you to activate your pancreas, you might say, don't really know how to do that, but actually you do. If you generate stress, it activates certain changes in your body. Okay, and this causes a massive change in hormones, which is why we hear stories of a mother lifting up a car to save her child. So 86,400. Any ideas what the significance of that number is? Pop your answers in the chat. Have a guess. I'll give you a moment. Have a quick swig. It's the number of seconds in a day. So if you think about it, in the course of a day, we can have a lot of thoughts. Question is, how many of them are calming, nurturing, supportive? There's a psychologist who said most of us have the same thoughts most of the thoughts we have are the same as yesterday. Most of those aren't very helpful. And actually, that's having an impact on our stress. As I say, some of these are subconscious. We don't even realize we're doing them. Long-term impact, we're more likely to develop diseases that make us sick if we keep having those small stresses, as well as the big stresses. We're more likely to develop conditions, heart disease, etc. Stress can literally corrode the brain. My dad, bless him, was a worrier. He developed dementia. He's not with us anymore, but he was, he could worry for England. If worrying was an Olympic sport, he would be on Team England. Okay, so we need to recognize that, when we're wasting our energy by worrying unnecessarily, how often do we worry about stuff and it never happens? Okay, I ignored the fact my health was deteriorating when I was in this stressful job. And with the benefit of hindsight, I should have just quit and gone and laid on a beach in Thailand for 3 months. So we need to understand, number one, stress, number two, neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to change with use. Scientists used to think that the adult brain didn't change, but in the year 2000, Eleanor Maguire from University College London studied the brains of black cab drivers. Guess how many streets black cab drivers have to memorize? Put your answers in the chat. Have a go. It doesn't matter if you get it wrong. What she discovered from doing this research is that their brains changed when they were learning the knowledge. Part of the brain, the hippocampus, which is responsible for memory and spatial awareness, got bigger compared to the general public. So the principle is what we practice, we get good at. And actually, I've got a friend who's a black cab driver. I'm meeting him for lunch tomorrow. I tested him once. I said, okay, what's the route from East Dulwich, where I live, to Wembley Stadium? And he told me the whole route. And I said, okay, well, go down this side road. What's the side road of that side road? And he could tell me the answer. Okay. They have to learn 25,000 streets. This was before SatNav, etc. I don't know how they approach it now. But the principle is whatever we practice, we get good at. If we practice something useful, I've got piano behind me, I'm learning that. As I'm practicing, I'm getting better. If we practice anxiety, low self-esteem, self-doubt, we get better at those things. If we practice calm and confidence, we get better at those things. So the other thing is that our responses become conditioned. You probably know about Pavlov and his dogs. He rang a bell every time he fed his dogs. After a while, he'd just ring the bell, the dogs would salivate because they had associated that noise with being fed. And we can condition ourselves in the same way. You know, I can get you to think of someone who you find really difficult to be around, and you'll have a physiological response. It might be small, it might be big. Okay, that's an example of a conditioned response. If I tell you to think about a holiday or somewhere you go that makes you feel happy, if you really imagine being there right now, seeing the things that you see, hearing the sounds you hear, feeling the physical sensations, that will start to influence what's going on in your physiology. I did that simple exercise with some clients a few years ago when I was in Bergen, and there was a woman sitting on the back row who had insomnia and anxiety. She was just attending with her friend who was doing the training. She fell asleep in 3 minutes when I taught her how to just do this simple exercise. And she kind of said, "Oh, I fell asleep." I said, "I know." And I said, I didn't train her, but she applied everything she learned. She overcame her insomnia, her anxiety. She quit her job and went traveling around Africa for a year. So good news. Let's get to some good news. As I say, the brain can change. Whatever we practice, we get good at. If you work in a bar and the electric till breaks down, you have to do the maths in your head. On the first day, you might not be very good at adding up 2 beers, glass of wine, packet of crisps. But after the first day, you'll be better. After 3 days, it'll be really easy. After a month, you'll be a pro at doing maths in your head. Your brain can change really quickly. Your brain's making lots of connections every second, and you can influence some of those connections. So if you recognize that there is stuff you're doing at the moment that's not useful, you can carry on training your brain to be good at that negative stuff. Or you can train your brain to be good at something that's more useful. You know, I've seen people go from being worriers to people who are much more relaxed, much more type B personality, go with the flow. We have a set of beliefs. Some of those beliefs are helpful, some of those beliefs are unhelpful. If those beliefs are unhelpful, we can change them. Okay. You know, some people have the belief that stress is bad. According to research, if you have that belief, you're more likely to have negative health outcomes after, 5 weeks of in this experiment they did. Whereas the people who had the belief that stress is good, it kind of motivates me, helps me perform well, had better health outcomes. All right. So, couple of principles of making change. The brain likes repetition. Whatever we practice, we get good at. So I teach a simple method called the IIC method. I teach people how to identify the unhelpful responses that they're doing. As I say, some of these are subconscious, some of them you're aware of, but often people don't know how to change them. So I teach people how to spot those unhelpful patterns and then how to interrupt those patterns. So, for example, when I did a presentation, one of the lawyers said, when you talk about futile frustrations, I recognized that was what I did. I get frustrated about stuff I can't change. Just knowing that helped him interrupt that pattern. And he said, I felt much more calm, much more resilient. And that's even before I trained him. Then I teach people how to create new responses. And with practice, those new responses can become our default. Okay. So we can't always control our events. We can't always control the environment, can't control other people, but we have more options about how we respond. Okay. So I talked about possibilities. We can focus on the negative possibility and we exclude the neutral possibility, the positive possibility. Oh, if I go and talk to that person who's normally really difficult, I bet they're going to be annoying. And so we start getting tense. My business partner said that he'd be having an argument in his head with his boss even before he got to work. And he went to this meeting where he was expecting a confrontation. And his boss was like, yeah, great idea. Let's go with that. And all that worry and stress was for no reason. All right. So when we know how to do that, know how to catch those negative responses, stop them, create new responses, there are benefits. Our body starts to produce and store energy and use our energy more efficiently. Our thinking is more productive and creative. Our digestion works properly. So we're getting nutrients to our cells. Our sleep is better. We get refreshing delta sleep where the body carries out important repair work. Our immune system works optimally. And one of the things that really made me cross in COVID is there was a lot of scaremongering. And actually, big topic, won't get into that. But, I spoke to friends and they were really worried and stressed. And they were like, aren't you worried and stressed? I said, no, because I know about how to influence the immune system through not only my mind, through diet, through exercise, etc. So anyway, that's a big topic. Won't get too much into that. But the other benefit is we develop a resilient mindset. I used to be a really anxious person. I used to worry what people think. The idea of giving a presentation like to a bunch of people like you would have been absolutely terrifying. Now, it's a little bit uncomfortable, but it's not a big issue. It doesn't get in the way. And I think I do a good enough job. You may beg to differ, and I'm okay with that. So I want to give you a little resource, which is called the resilient mindset method. If you recognize sometimes you're making negative predictions about some meeting, or like, when I had to give a speech at my daughter's wedding, years before when I had to give a speech as a best man, I was worrying about it for 6 months. Using this method, every time I caught myself feeling a bit of tension and I could notice a bit of tension in my body, I just used this method. And by the time I stood up to give a talk, I was like 95% my normal relaxed self. And I was happy with the job I did. I got good feedback. I kept it short and sweet. The best man went on and on and on. And so, this is a little resource. If you'd like it, I'll send it to Rob. He can pass it on to you, or Rob can pass on my email. You can email me. I'll give it to you. So if you've got any questions, I'll pause now and answer any questions. So let me just stop sharing, have a look at the chat. Okay, got some good guesses. 50,000, 30,000. Jane was closest, 24,000. The answer was 25, as I said. Yeah, so any questions?
How does age come into this, Simon? As the older you get, the less plastic you become, surely. Your brain, at least, anyway.
Well, it
No?
is true that as we get older, we learn less quickly, is the notion. Kids do learn more quickly, but, I'm learning the piano at the moment. And I started learning when I was like 8 or 9. I'd love to be able to do a comparison with how quickly I was learning then and how quickly I'm learning now. I don't think it's hindering me, the fact that I'm 60. I'm still learning, and I can see that I'm progressing. A few years ago, I decided to learn the drums because my parents didn't let me buy a drum kit when I get a drum kit when I was understand 8 for 7, uh, understandably. But I thought, actually, I want to learn the drums. Again, I learned, after a year, I was much better at playing the drums than I was at the beginning of the year. So it is a factor, but I don't think we should let that stop us. We're all continually learning. You're all here, you know, because you want to learn. You're all, working with Rob and Avant here because you want to learn stuff. So does that answer your question?
That's good to know. Yes, it does. Thank you. I shall carry on learning, or try to at least.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as I say, I think we all are always learning. And if I'm a little bit slower now than I was when I was 8, I don't really care. I don't let it stop me.
Soko.
Yes. I'm really curious about this topic because it's it's um it's an important theme at the moment for me. So thank you so much for the presentation. And so I have physical reaction to when I receive emails from certain people because the relationship with these people have not been very well, have not gone well.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's constant tension, and there's not many face-to-face interactions, but mostly by email. And I have been practicing meditation and um, going out, regular walking or exercise. And I thought it's getting better, but actually I still have that goosebumps when I receive email, even
Yes.
before reading the content.
Yeah.
And I would, uh, how could I change to the healthier response?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's really a very good example of how our mind can interpret things in a particular way. Okay. And it can be subconscious. It's like you're not consciously producing goosebumps. Okay. Now, there's a few things I'd say. Number one, if you were to guess, what do you think you're saying to yourself at some level in order to generate those goosebumps? It might not be conscious, but what do you think you might be saying to yourself?
Oh, it's again. It's another another hostile email.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So by saying that to yourself, oh no, it's another hostile email. Is it always a hostile email? Is that prediction always right?
80%.
80% of the time. Okay. Now, a question you can ask yourself is what age would you put on the behavior of that person who is sending emails that are a little bit aggressive, hostile? What age, if you were to age them, what age are they? Are they behaving like an adult?
It's very cheeky and how yes, very cheeky adult. It's adult way, very political, yet um, the purpose is ugly.
Yeah. But how, consider that happy, content people don't behave in aggressive, hostile manners. They don't pull people down. I've been getting an email from someone recently. They've stopped now, but every email they sent me was aggressive, hostile. In the past, that really would have triggered me.
Mm.
Now I'm just thinking, this person is behaving like a teenager. How do I respond to teenagers? Well, I think
Ah,
I don't take teenagers seriously. When my daughter's cousin, when they were about 9 years old, and I said, okay, it's time for bed now, she said, I hate you. I was like, whatever. I don't take much notice of what a 9-year-old says if they say, I hate you. And I suggest to you, think about that person in this way. How old are they when they're behaving like this?
how long?
How old? How old are they?
How
How
old? Also age.
is the behavior?
Behavior.
Yeah. Are they behaving like a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 3-year-old?
Um, maybe 13.
Yeah. Now, imagine them as a 13-year-old, dressed as a 13-year-old, wearing what's a 13-year-old is wearing. Are they male or female?
Male or female, both.
Okay,
There
both. Okay,
are
so
multiple.
if it's the male, I'm thinking of the male. They've got shorts on, they've got dirty knees, they've got a snotty nose, they've got a dirty shirt, they've got a catapult hanging out their pocket. How do you respond now when you see them as a 13-year-old going, making a fuss?
How, how, how do I respond?
Imagine them as a 13-year-old, maybe shrink them down so they're 6 inches high and their voice is a little bit squeaky. How do you respond to them now as you see them as a 13-year-old just saying silly things? That's what they're saying.
Maybe it's natural for 13 years. So, okay, maybe I was like that when I was 13.
Simon, can I give you a demonstration of when I was an engineer, I'd have meetings and there was a particular meeting I'd go to and the guy was just rude. He would demand things that would get my back up. So we'd always be an argument. I went to a stress counselor and he said to me, what you've got to do, Rob, is just say yes. I goes, pardon? He goes, if the guy asks you to do something, you haven't got to do it, just say yes. So I'd go to the meetings and he'd go to me, do it a week. I go, I hear you, I understand you, and I'll try and do it. At that point, if he carried on shouting at me, he looks like a complete idiot. I just stand there smiling because what I was told was all he's trying to do is get me upset and get me angry. That was his sole goal to do it. So by me just saying, I hear you, I understand you, it meant that he could write whatever he wanted, say what he wanted. The problem is it didn't affect me. Eventually, he changed the way he spoke to me because he had no
Right.
choice. And if they're
Yeah.
because they're writing you stuff, so because they know they're pressing buttons and they know the buttons to press and they're doing it. If you get an email from them and you get the email, read through it and go, I hear you understand. Let me look into it and get back to you. What that will do is that's you telling them basically to fuck off. I don't care anymore. Write them all you want. Write as many emails as you want. And because they're doing it to drag you down. And you've got to basically, and I was told that if you do those sorts of responses, what will happen is they will get angry, but you won't. You move the stress from you to them because they're expecting you to, because normally when you get upset, the response you do is going to be an angry response. That's what they want you to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And you know, play around with it a bit. I invite you to just play around with these different ideas. For me, as I say, I used to get really triggered by being trolled on social media because I'm posting on social media. But now I just have this notion that if someone is behaving badly,
Mm.
that's information about them. As I say, happy, content people don't go around behaving badly. They behave in a respectful way. If someone's not being respectful, you know, I've got the option on
Mm.
Twitter to say, look, I'm happy to engage with you if you're going to be respectful. If you're not, then we'll end this conversation here. I can easily block you. In terms of your client, another thing just to consider, and this may or may not be option, but I don't know if you've heard of Tim Ferriss. He wrote the 4 Hour Work Week. He's a very successful entrepreneur. And he did an audit of his clients. He found out that 20% of his clients were giving him 80% of his income,
Mm.
and 20% of his clients were giving him 80% of his headaches. And so he emailed those clients and said, look, you need to change the way you're interacting with me, or you go and do business elsewhere. Two of the clients left, or it might have been one left and two stayed. But, some stayed, some left, and the one that stayed behaved better. And as I say, you might feel like, oh, I really need this client. But if you feel like that's an option to say, look, I don't like the way you're interacting with me, either change the way you're interacting or we stop doing business. You might not have the luxury of being able to do that, but if you do, consider that as an option. Is that an option for you?
No,
That's
because
not an option, is it? So
it's
can I make a
it's
suggestion, so Kurt, and to Simon as well? Right.
Yeah.
What you've got to do is when you get the email in, you need to respond to it in a way that is so polite. Think of it as a trail, okay? So someone writes you an email, okay? You respond politely. They then rude to you again. You respond politely. You've now got a paper trail. That paper trail can be used, trust me, really bad. So what you do when you get an email in, you go to ChatGPT and go, can you please respond to this email in the politest, nicest way possible? And ChatGPT will write you a beautiful response about how you understand them, how you feel their pain. Okay. When they get that, they're going to have to think, oh shit, how do I respond to someone being polite to me? Because if they start being, the thing about paper trails is this saying it, you can do whatever you want. When you write it down, you've got to be very careful what you write down. I know this because I've used it myself on one of my directors. He would be really up. I got a file so big of what he said to me once. I got dragged in for a meeting with two board directors, my director, and HR in a meeting, which meant I was going to get the sack. I'm sitting in this room. They're all shouting at me. I goes, listen, who are you? She goes, HR. I goes, look, have a read of that. I goes, the first one's particularly good. She opened this file up, read this email he sent me, looked at him and goes, how many emails did he send you? And he goes, none. She goes, these are all one-way emails. I went, he's terribly rude to me all the time. Don't know why. I would shout at him in the office and swear at him, and he'd write a response, which was very stupid. He then got the sack. I then carried on working. Okay, now you've got to think about this. But also, when you respond nicely, here's what will happen. I'll guarantee you this, they will be livid. Mad livid because they don't like it. That will make you smile, knowing that you've upset them. In a nice way, though. And if they want to be rude, Soko, let them be rude. Just respond nicely. They'll be rude nicely. And every time you get one in, you can think, do you know what? Let's be polite again. And it will make you smile. So instead of being worried about them, you'll be waiting for them. So you can respond to them nicely. Think of it as a challenge.
mm,
Is that the right way to look at it, Simon?
Yeah. And
I like that.
I do like that whole idea of if someone's sending you a message, and I was doing this with this person. Thank you very much for your email. That's very thought provoking. That's very helpful to me. And you can couch it in your own terms. This is what I can do in this situation. You might not. There might be certain things say, well, thanks for that suggestion, but I don't think that's something I can offer at the moment. So you have to use your judgment. But I like what Rob's saying is the more and the other thing about it is the person is going like, are they being sarcastic? I think, they can't, so you're now getting in their head a bit. All right. But,
So can I ask
there's
something, Simon?
definitely
Sorry,
more. Go on.
sorry. Is
No,
there a
no, go
way of
ahead.
separating the professional and the personal? So these emails that come in, you take quite personally because it's your business and it's a part of you. They don't know you at all. And so somehow you've got, I don't know whether it's worth separating that personal, whatever it is, aggression that's towards you, and to see it as it's part of my business, professional. So I don't know whether that would that help or is that not as a bit of a dead end kind of way of looking at it.
Are you asking Shoku or me?
Sorry, Simon, I was asking you actually, and
Yeah.
and
No,
in
absolutely.
Shoku's
I
in Shoku's situation.
yeah, I absolutely think that is useful. I do think it's really useful to unpick what's going on when we have a reaction. And a simple way of doing that is to just guess, what is it I'm saying to myself when this person is, sending me this email that I have a response? Oh no, it's going to be an aggressive email. What if it is an aggressive email? What is it I'm saying to myself about getting an aggressive email? Am I saying to myself, oh, actually, this is going to upset me. I can't cope with this, person or whatever. And then we start to unpick that. Well, actually, is it true that I can't deal with someone who's being aggressive? Actually, I can. And I say there's so much more I'd like to say about this, but within the confines of the time we've got, I can't really do a one-to-one session. But there is definitely more. As I say, it is possible to learn to train ourselves to be less reactive. And one of the ways we do that, imagine if you just want to, Shoku, for a moment, and others can do this as well, is close your eyes and just imagine surrounding yourself with a little bubble or a force field. What color is it? So you can tell me, Shoku, you let me know. You can speak to me as I'm just guiding you through this. But
Yes, sort of like creamy pink and blue.
yeah. And now imagine a child of 5 throwing mud at you, at your bubble or your force field. What happens when they throw mud at you?
It turns to be brown.
Yeah,
The change.
yeah. What happens to your force field?
It all gets brown.
So when they throw mud at you, it turns brown.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that little child has a lot of power over your force field. Your force field is more powerful than that. Your force field has the power to just let that mud bounce off it. So I invite you to just imagine that force field finding its own color again and that mud just sliding off to the ground. Okay.
Mm.
And maybe that's something you have to practice over and over again for a little bit. This is where the brain training comes in. We have to practice another child throwing some mud at you and just imagining it bouncing off. Okay.
Mm.
And now imagine a 10-year-old being a bit sulky, throwing stones at you. What happens when it hits your force field?
Brown.
Say again?
Say the question once again.
Yeah. What happens when a child throws some pebbles at your
Oh,
force field? Your
oh,
force field,
beautiful turns to be it's like a cherry blossom tree.
yeah, now it's even stronger. It's even more powerful. Someone can throw something at you, but you have this strong sense of, I am good enough at what I do. I'm good enough as I am. I'm doing my best to give a service to people. I'm coming in good faith. Okay, I am good enough. And, I deserve to be treated with respect. If people don't respect me, that's information about them. Okay, that's their own wounds. I don't have to take their stuff, their wounds personally. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
Yes. Yeah.
People who are wounded throw their shit around, excuse my language. Okay. But we don't have to take on their stuff. We can say, okay, I recognize this person is wounded. That's why they behave the way they behave, but I don't have to take that personally.
Mm.
Okay. I'm still a good person. In the past,
Yes.
someone criticized a video that I made. This is like a year or so ago. And I felt triggered. And I thought, why am I triggered? At some level, I'm saying to myself, I've done something bad or wrong. And then I thought, actually, no, I haven't done anything bad or wrong. I'm just communicating. They can communicate with me with respect.
Mm.
Otherwise, they can bugger off. Obviously, in your situation, at the moment, you might not have that flexibility. And maybe part of your business plan is to attract more people who are nice to work with, so you can let go of the people who aren't nice to work with. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All
Yes.
right.
Thank
But I invite you to practice that every day for 30 days. Imagine being in your force field, someone throws something at you, and you're still saying, I'm good enough. I'm lovable. I'm amazing. I'm deserving of respect and I'm deserving of people to treat me with respect. If they're not doing that, then I'm going to have to, I may have to make some changes in the long term. All right, I'll deal with this in the short term. I'll use those strategies that I've mentioned, that Rob's mentioned, that Harmony's mentioned. You know, I'm going to work on building that robustness so I am less affected by other people. I'm
Yeah,
going to keep reminding myself when people behave badly, that's just information about them. It's not
mm.
information about me.
If other if other people don't have a question, sorry, to add one more layer, it's with the relationship with the head office, which needs to continue. So that makes
Okay.
even harder. Customers are fine. It's
Okay.
the relationship with the head office, and the same people are sending the emails, which are not nice, but we are bound by the franchise agreement.
I
That
understand.
makes it really hard. But I will use the techniques that you and Harmony and Rob have introduced, and thank you so much.
Okay, you're
Oh no,
welcome.
it's one of the a quick one, guys. My youngest daughter is how do you put one right to say positivity oozes out of her is the things when she was 10 years old. Since 10 years old, she's posted records of herself singing on YouTube. And every time she posted a record, somebody would go in and tell everybody how bad it was. And I said to her once, "You're not upset?" She goes, "Dad, 10 people tell nobody." She goes, "One upset person might tell 10 people. That's potentially 10 new listeners." Yeah. What? But I go, what? She goes, yeah.
That's
She goes,
positive.
yeah.
Yeah.
She goes, negative people tell everybody how bad you are. They're going to come and listen to you. Some will think you're
Yeah.
bad. Some will think you're good. She goes, and then it grows. She goes, you can't, she goes, no matter how good you are, she goes, there's always going to be people that don't like you. She goes to me, but that's good, she goes, because they'll be my biggest promoters to the world by telling them how bad I am. And people go, how bad can she be? Let's go and see. And what happens as youngsters, I call correctly, that belief is basically when we go to school is literally beaten out of us. You can't believe that. You can't, no, you can't do that. You can't, oh no, that's not, no, you can't. So we keep being told we can't. And that over time becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where we believe we can't. So when someone's rude to us, we just take it as we have to accept it because that's our life. Okay, but it's not our life. We have the power within us to be anything we want, do what you want, and always be happy. And what we do is we like Simon says, we remember this, they're not upsetting you, you're upsetting yourself. And they know that by what they write. Okay. If you respond to
Mm.
them, and remember this, if you know that no matter what, think of this right now, no matter what they write to you, you're going to write them a response that is so polite and so nice, they're going to find it difficult to keep being rude to you. Because if you keep being nice to them and remember this, I learned, even if I didn't agree with somebody, I would say, I hear you, I understand you, let me see what I can do for you. Because at that point, if they carry on shout at me, I'd go, but I've agreed with you. Why are you still shouting? And I'd smile. And they knew exactly what I was doing, but they couldn't do anything about it. Because once I agree with them, yeah, I'll do it. I wouldn't do it though, but I'd say I'd do it. And then I'd go off. So, but it is. And out there, the worst thing in the world is people put you down because their lives have no meaning and they have to do something to somebody because they then know they're not feeling happy. If they can make you feel more unhappy, then they know at least they're not as unhappy as you. And it's projecting themselves onto you is what they're doing. They're just unhappy. Happy people, even if they've got to write a bad letter, won't be rude.
Yeah.
Unhappy people would be rude just for being rude because they do. They don't understand. They go, well, I'm having a bad day, so let's just I'll write that to them as well. So yeah, ChatGPT. Remember this: AI is your friend. When they get your responses, they're going to think you've had that written by a lawyer. It will be the responses you get from ChatGPT are going to be off the scale, funny and nice and polite. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
it's a
I've
great.
been sorry, Simon. I've just been reprimanded by my wife. I've got to let you close the session.
No worries. No, I'm just learning the power of Chat GPT. It is a great resource. I just, and Frank Kern, who's an entrepreneur, says, some people have a need for significance, just like Rob's saying. So we need to recognize that people, that's one of the ways of getting significance is trying to put other people down. I have written a document on self-esteem. Again, if you want that, let me know. Hannah just asked to repeat the phrase. So when people behave badly, it's information about them. How we respond is information about us. Okay. So we need to recognize that people's behavior is nothing to do with you. All right. Was there anything else? Uh, Hannah's had to leave. So yeah, I'm kind of done. That's as much as I want to say for now. So thanks for the positive feedback. Appreciate that. Yeah, Rob said he'll pass on my details. If you've got any questions, let me know. If you'd like to know
Excellent.
more.
Thank you, Simon. That was
Thank
excellent.
you so much.
You're welcome.
So yes, and we will all, yeah,
Thank you.
Sorry,
we'll
I've
all,
taken a lot of time.
we'll all. So remember this, guys. No matter what you get through the post, in the email, okay, think of it as a daily challenge that's going to put a smile on your face when you send a response. Because when you send a response, you will be laughing when you send it. Trust me. I used to always love my responses like that because the people's faces, they think, shit, what's he up to? Is he's agreeing with me. There's something doesn't compute. And they will think, and they will have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
Your front door at their front door because all this is anonymous. It's easy to send emails off and uh, give people rubbish on social media and everything because they're hiding behind their laptops. So tell them you're at their front door and you're about to bang on their front. I don't know. Tell them. I don't know. Give them shit. That's what I say. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah,
Makes me angry.
I would say, recognize that our minds are powerful. And if you can generate some response without even opening the email, that's just an example of the power of your mind. You can use your mind to be a bit more playful. Imagine them wearing a ridiculous outfit, or someone, I think I was having, it might have been you, Rob, it might have been someone else I was chatting to, saying if you're giving a presentation, imagine everyone being naked. And that's a way of just kind of reducing your fear, or imagine they're dressed ridiculously, and it's just a way of just changing the way you think about things. Imagine that person as a baby in a nappy, imagine them as a child. Now see them acting like a child, now see how you respond to a child, but practice that. Practice being in your bubble before you open that email. I'm a good, amazing person. This person's obviously not very happy. They're obviously got issues, you know, whatever it is, make it up. I could say more, but I won't. So just use your imagination. They're having a bad day. Maybe their girlfriend has run off with the milkman, or their boyfriend's run off with the hairdresser, or whatever. Make it up. Just recognize that your mind is powerful and you can use that to your advantage. So thanks for the invitation.
That's
Thanks,
all right, Simon.
everyone.
Thanks for that. That's a great one. I've got all the notes down, and I will send out Simon's details tomorrow, guys, in my newsletter, and I'll post it into the group chat as well. So you've got all his details. You can contact him for more information on getting your mind sorted out.
Great. Thank you so much.
No worries, guys. Okay.
Bye.
You're welcome.
Right, guys. Have a nice
Thank you.
evening. Okay, and I hope it's not raining as much where you are as it is here at the moment. Right.
Okay,
Bye,
bye.
guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
Simon.
Rob. See you next week.